Let's go. Hey little buddies, I'm Zion. How are you today? I hope you're doing okay. Do you see my hat? Do you know what kind of hat this is? It's a birthday hat. I like to wear it on my birthday. Do you have a hat? Put it on. If you don't have a hat, that's okay. We can just put on our thinking caps. It's time to read with Zion on the Big Lake Channel. Today, our story is titled Biloxi Blue Summer, a short story series written by A.Z. Nostaw. He sat there singing, "Big train keep on rolling, big train keep on passing by. Big train keep on rolling, just keep on passing by. Keep on rolling, no need to stop now. I can sit right here a few more years." It was the beginning of another beautiful morning. It was a quiet, billowy Biloxi morning. Feather sat up in bed and turned his face toward the open window. The outside shutters were partially closed, and the speckled light of the cloudy morning was piercing through the slats in the shutters. Feather soon sprang up out of his bed. At his feet hit the floor in a hard thud. His dog Licorice picked up his head from the rug he was lying on. Feather had the longest feet. Indeed, his feet were so big his mother could barely keep him in shoes. Feather was only 9 years old, but he was already wearing a man-sized 12.5 shoe. When Feather stepped anywhere, you knew he was coming. There was no such thing as tiptoeing for him. Every single step he took was a thunderous slap to the pavement. And those hard, clunky steps escaped no one but him. Licorice the dog scrambled to his feet also. When Feather moved, Licorice moved. Feather and Licorice were always together, stuck together, in every pursuit. Well, I guess you could say it was like Licorice anointed feathers, inseparable. So as Feather made his way to the window to fully open the outside shutters, Licorice stood placing his paws up onto the windowsill. Feather and Licorice looked out at the Gulf from the upstairs window, together, the way they did every single morning, to see what the Biloxi summer day would bring. The water in the Gulf was pretty rough and choppy this morning. They could hear the waves crashing against the concrete pier outside the beach house. It was obvious that high tide had come, as they could look down the sandy beach and see lots of seed leaves, algae, and debris washed up far and along the seashore. They could see rain showers far off in the distance over the beautiful Gulf. And they also saw that the billowy clouds were blowing fast and rippling the water stoutly. But they could also see the bright sun piercing through the clouds. And they knew the clouds would soon burn off. And this would be another sunny and awesome summer day. Feather quickly picked up his basketball jersey and pulled it on over his bushy, sandy red hair. He slid his enormous feet into his flip-flops and took off down the stairs. It was bad enough that the loud clops in every step of those flip-flops made a clap you could hear a mile off. But when those big feet in those floppy shoes hit the stairs, it nearly shook the entire house. Well, of course, it woke everyone else up, if they weren't already up by now. But his mama Flora was up. He knew it, because he could smell and hear the bacon sizzling in the kitchen. By the time he turned to head off to the kitchen, Licorice jumped over his colossal feet and shot straight for the doorway. Licorice usually followed Feather, but when it came to bacon, Licorice was already steps ahead. Licorice practically slid through the kitchen door, wagging his tail and greeting Mama Flora. As far as Licorice was concerned, he was a human. He was a boy too. He hurried to his own chair. Licorice had taken over Feather's baby sister's old high chair. Indy did not sit anymore, since she was now 3 and preferred to sit with the family at the breakfast table. Last summer, Licorice just started to climb up into the high chair and sit there. Most likely because he determined in his dog mind that he, the baby, was always fed first. So after Indy decided to abandon it, he quickly took it over. The whole family laughed hysterically when Licorice did that. So Mama Flora gave Licorice his own plate, and Big Girl Indy gave Licorice, the dog, her blanket. She was through with that too. Daddy Rico just laughed at Licorice and shook his head and said, "Well, I guess I better put him on my insurance. I better call HR." Ever since last summer, Baby Indy's high chair became Licorice's official chair. He beat Feather to and through the kitchen door, jumped around, and wagged his tail at Mama Flora, and mounted that high chair, and barked as if he was putting in his breakfast order. He did this every morning, and every morning Mama Flora would say, "Okay, baby, here's your bacon." She'd give him 3 slices of bacon and an egg. Daddy Rico said, "Licorice, you're sure eating a lot of my bacon. I think you might be in need of a job soon." Feather made it through the kitchen door and walked over to hug his mom. Mama Flora gave him a big kiss and asked him if he was ready to eat. He said yes, and headed over to fix his plate. He sat down, and his mom poured him a glass of orange juice. By that time, his father Rico and little sister Indy walked in and sat down at the breakfast table, giving Flora a hug and a kiss good morning. They smiled and started in, chatting and talking about how beautiful the Biloxi day would be. As they sat there, looking out of the expansive breakfast nook windows, they could see the seashore and the now palatial and calm Gulf water resting. The water was now aflood with light, as the sun was directly shining down over the Gulf. Ripples that looked like floating diamonds washed over the surface of the water. It was beautiful, tranquil, and mesmerizing, and you could smell the salty air coming through the French open doors. Mama Flora quickly fixed everyone's plates and sat down with them. After giving thanks, they joined in eating, laughing, talking, and making plans for the day. Licorice had long since finished his breakfast, and so he was now laying on the floor next to the breakfast table. Waiting for Feather's next move, Feather got up, and Licorice rose up and escorted Feather to the sink to deposit his plate. Feather walked to the corner to pick up his basketball, and he and Licorice headed toward the patio outside. Feather and a Licorice sat down for a few minutes, still looking out over the Gulf. And then they crossed out onto the sandy beach and headed off to the basketball court just down the way. Feather and Licorice did this nearly every day of that long summer. Their family spent all their summers in Biloxi. It was where his mother and father met many years before, while they were on spring break when they were in college. His father, Rico, graduated from Tulane University Law School in New Orleans, and their mother had done her medical residency at Xavier University in the same city. So Biloxi was the place they met and fell in love so many years before Feather was born. And this was the place the family gathered every summer to enjoy the beautiful beach house which they owned. And the whole lifetime of memories would catalog there over all the summer retreats. It was the entire family's favorite place to be. They often traveled here to their beach house, but they'd stay for months during the summertime. Feather and Licorice seemingly knew every mile of the sandy white beach as those long feet and those four paws covered miles up and down the boulevard on the concrete walkway each day. They made their way to the basketball court. It was where Feather spent most of his time. He practiced shooting three-pointers and layups. And he really hoped someday his now short body would catch up to his enormous feet so that he could dunk. His dad Rico was 6'6". So though Feather was short right now, he hoped someday to be at least as tall as his father. He hoped he could attend Xavier University in New Orleans because that school had an awesome basketball program. Feather practiced his shots here nearly every day, and Licorice's pal would lay there and watch him. And Licorice would bark 3 times every time Feather would make a shot. Sometimes Licorice would jump up in the air and run around the court if he thought Feather's shot was particularly good. Licorice was Feather's biggest fan. When they left the court each day, they'd make their way up to Slap Your Mama's barbecue restaurant, which was a little farther down the way. And they would always sit on the outside patio overlooking the Gulf. His daddy Rico was big buddies with the owner, so Feather and Rico could order anything they wanted. And his dad would pay the bill whenever he would come in. Feather and Licorice could have anything they wanted, but they always ordered the same thing every single time: a root beer float, cheese fries, and a rib bone for Licorice to eat. When they finished up their lunch, they thanked and waved bye to all the staff there, who knew them by name. Feather and Licorice headed out and walked further down the seawall walkway. They would soon pass the bench where the old man would ride his bike and sit every day. Rain or shine, the old man would be there, and he sat there singing, "Big train, keep on rolling. Big train, keep on passing by. No need to stop now. I can sit here a few more years." The old man sat there every day, looking out over the Gulf waters and singing the same song for hours. The old man sang the song steadily, loudly, and robustly, all day, every single day, until around 5:30 p.m., when the evening train would begin its roar through Biloxi, and you'd hear the train's whistle. He'd never said a word to Feather and Licorice. He'd just nod his head and tip his hat and keep on singing. They'd walk on by him, and Feather would say, "Good evening, sir." And Licorice would bark one time and sniff at the old man's feet. This day they did the same routine greeting, and Father greeted the old man, and Licorice snipped at his feet and walked one time. They went on their way a little farther. They heard the roar of the train coming through. They heard the train whistle. They heard the old man stop singing and turned to see him mount his bicycle to leave the bench. They turned and waited to see him ride off, but today he didn't. He mounted his bike and rode directly towards them. It startled Feather a little because he knew the old man's routine. This was unusual. But what was even more unusual was that he rode straight to them and said, "Hey, youngins, did y'all see them blue turtles?" Feather answered and said, "No, we didn't see any blue turtles. What's a blue turtle?" Feather thought the old man might have been a little crazy, or maybe he'd gotten too hot today. The sun was blazing. He knew that Biloxi was filled with protected turtle nesting sites along the beach. And he knew about green turtles, but he just thought the old man was making it up. But the old man said as he turned it right off, "If you come back tomorrow, I'll show you them blue turtles. I'll show you where they are. Come on back tomorrow." And as the old man was riding off, Feather could see him singing another song. He was singing the words, "Biloxi Blue Summer, the turtles are coming, the blue turtles are coming." That is the end of our story. Please come back tomorrow for another beautiful story. Thank you for listening to Reading with Zion on the Big Lake channel. Hope you have a great day. Goodbye.